Emily Mason had always been the type to go unnoticed. At 27, she preferred the quiet of her small bookstore in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, to the noisy parties her friends frequented. With her brown hair usually tied in a messy bun and thick glasses, Emily seemed to have stepped out of a Jane Austen novel, out of place in time and space. What few knew about Emily, in fact, almost no one knew, was that she was the only daughter of William Mason, one of the most respected commanders of SEAL Team 6. Growing up, Emily had witnessed her father leave for missions he could never mention and return with scars he could never explain. She had learned early on to live with secrets, to value discretion, and above all, to be independent. That particularly hot summer, Emily decided to take a solo road trip along the East Coast, driving her old 2009 Honda Civic. It wasn't a trip planned with high expectations, just her, a few books in the back seat, and carefully curated playlists for each state she planned to cross. The idea was simple: drive, stop in small towns, visit local bookstores, and maybe find inspiration for the novel she secretly dreamed of writing. On the third day of their trip, while driving through rural Virginia, the car's gas gauge began to dangerously approach the red mark. Emily checked her GPS and saw that there was a gas station about 8 kilometers away. With a sigh of relief, she continued on, praying that the car wouldn't stop before she got there. The Last Mile Gas and Shop gas station was one of those places that's frozen in the 80s. Old gas pumps, a convenience store with faded signs advertising cold beer and cheap cigarettes, and a large neon sign that flashed erratically. Emily parked next to one of the pumps and got out of the car, feeling the stifling July heat envelop her body like a heavy blanket. While filling up her tank, she noticed a group of Harley-Davidson motorcycles parked near the entrance of the small shop. There were 5 enormous chrome-plated bikes gleaming under the relentless sun. Emily wasn't the type to judge a book by its cover, but something about that scene instinctively put her on alert. Perhaps it was the unofficial training she'd received from her father throughout her life. Always be aware of your surroundings, or perhaps it was just intuition. After finishing refueling, Emily decided to go into the small shop to buy water and some snacks for the road. As soon as she opened the door, she felt the welcome air conditioning, but also 5 pairs of eyes fixed on her. The men were exactly as one would expect: large, bearded, covered in tattoos, and wearing leather vests with patches from a motorcycle club that Emily didn't recognize. The silence that settled in when she entered was palpable, uncomfortable. The barista, an elderly gentleman in a faded Red Sox cap, gave her a look that seemed a mixture of concern and resignation. Emily took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders as her father had taught her, and walked straight to the drinks section, ignoring the stares that followed her. Well, what do we have here? The deep, drawling voice came from one of the motorcyclists, the tallest of them, with a gray beard and arms covered in faded tattoos, a little princess lost on the road. Emily grabbed a bottle of water and some snacks, keeping her eyes fixed on the items as if she were choosing between life and death. Her strategy was clear: don't engage, pay, and leave as quickly as possible. "Hey, I'm talking to you, doll." The man approached, blocking her path to the cashier. The smell of leather, sweat, and beer invaded Emily's personal space. It's rude to ignore someone when they're talking to you. "Excuse me," Emily said firmly, surprising even herself with the stability of her voice. "I need to pay." The man laughed, looking at his companions who now formed a semicircle around her. "Did you hear that? Excuse me. So polite. I bet you've never been around real men, have you?" Emily felt her heart race but kept a straight face. Years of watching her father handle tense situations had taught her that showing fear was like throwing gasoline on a fire. "Maybe we should show her what it's like to ride with men who know how to treat a woman," said another, younger motorcyclist with a nose piercing and a smile that made Emily's stomach churn. The clerk finally intervened, his trembling voice betraying his own. "Fear? Come on, guys, leave the young lady alone. She's just buying a few things." "Shut up, old man," the leader replied, without taking his eyes off Emily. "This is a private conversation." "Emily, took advantage of the momentary distraction to try and get around the group, but felt a rough hand grab her arm hard enough to leave marks. "Where do you think you're going, doll? The party has barely begun." It was at that moment that Emily did something that surprised even herself. With a fluid movement that seemed to have been practiced 1,000 times, she twisted her wrist, freeing herself from the grip, and then extended 2 fingers rigidly against the man's throat, not with enough force to cause serious damage, but enough to make him gag and recoil in surprise. The other motorcyclists moved forward, but Emily had already retreated into a defensive stance that her father had taught her since she was 12 years old. "I just want to pay and leave," she said, her voice now firm as steel. "I don't want any trouble. You've already caused trouble." "Bitch!" growled the leader, recovering from the initial shock. Nobody messes with Snake like that and gets away unscathed. It was at that moment that Emily realized she had made a mistake. She should have just endured it, paid, and left. Now, there were 5 angry men blocking her exit, and the elderly clerk seemed more interested in hiding behind the counter than calling the police. With slow, calculated movement, Emily took her phone from her pocket and, keeping her eyes on the men, dialed a number she knew by heart since childhood. It wasn't 911. It was a number her father had given her for extreme emergency, a number she had never used before. "What do you think you're doing?" The man called Snake stepped forward again. Emily put the phone to her ear, still in a defensive position. When the call was answered, she said only 4 words: "Shadow Protocol. Last mile." On the other end of the line, there was a moment of silence followed by a short reply that she couldn't hear clearly due to the sound of chairs being dragged as the motorcyclist sped toward her. "Do you know what we're going to do with you now?" Snake grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "We're gonna take you for a walk, teach you a few lessons about respect." Emily dropped her phone on the floor and adopted a more aggressive stance. She knew she couldn't beat 5 men in a fight, but she also knew she didn't need to win. She just needed to buy time. "You don't want to do this," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "You still have a chance to get out of here and move on with your lives." The men laughed, the sound echoing in the small shop. "Listen to her. The little princess thinks she can threaten us." The younger one was the first to lunge forward. Emily dodged his clumsy advance and used his own momentum to shove him against a shelf of chips. Bags of crisps and pretzels rained down on them. The second man was more cautious, circling her like a predator. Emily maintained her composure, remembering the lesson. "Keep your feet firmly on the ground, Ems. Breathe. Don't waste energy. Use your surroundings to your advantage." As he lunged forward, Emily grabbed a 2-liter soda bottle from the nearest shelf and hurled it at his face. The impact wasn't enough to knock him out, but the frothy liquid that splattered in his eyes left him temporarily blind and furious. The other 3, including Snake, decided to attack simultaneously. Emily knew she didn't stand a chance against all 3 at once. She felt a blow hit her ribs, another her shoulder. She fell to one knee, but continued fighting, landing a kick to one of their legs, causing him to fall as well. That's when he heard the sound, a sound he knew well from his father's stories. A helicopter, too close to be a coincidence. The motorcyclists also heard it, momentarily distracted by the growing noise. Emily seized the opportunity to crawl behind the counter, where the elderly clerk was crouched, trembling. "What's happening?" he asked, his eyes wide with fear. Emily simply shook her head, catching her breath. "You'll want to stay low." Outside, the sound of the helicopter became deafening, and then there was a moment of relative silence as it landed somewhere nearby. The motorcyclists looked at each other, confused but still furious. "Do you think he called for reinforcements?" Snake laughed, but there was a note of uncertainty in his voice. "The local police would take at least half an hour to get here." "It's not the police," Emily murmured to herself. Exactly 20 minutes after Emily made the call, the door of the convenience store burst open. 6 men entered, not wearing full military uniforms, but discreetly dressed in tactical trousers and black t-shirts. Anyone with even a basic knowledge of military matters, however, would instantly recognize their posture, formation, and the precision with which they moved. "What the hell is this?" Snake growled, turning to face the newcomers. "Who the hell are you?" The man at the head of the group, tall, with gray hair cut close to his scalp and eyes that seemed made of granite, completely ignored the question. His eyes swept across the store until they found Emily behind the counter. "Emily?" she called, her voice both a question and an order. "I'm fine, Uncle Mike," she replied, slowly rising to her feet, clutching her aching ribs. The motorcyclists looked from Emily to the men, beginning to realize they had made a serious mistake. "Who are you?" Snake asked again, now with less confidence. "Commander Michael Torsten, SEAL Team 6, retired," the man replied emotionlessly. "And that young woman you were harassing is the daughter of my former commander." Blood seemed to drain from Snake's face. Even in criminal circles, the name SEAL Team 6 carried a specific weight, a reputation that transcended civilian and military boundaries. "Look, it was just a misunderstanding," one of the other motorcyclists tried to negotiate, slowly backing away toward the door. "We didn't know ... Stop right where you are," ordered another of the men on the team, his voice not allowing for disobedience. In less than 30 seconds, the 5 motorcyclists were immobilized on the ground, their arms twisted at painful angles, but without any actual blows having been struck. It was a display of strength and skill so precise, it seemed almost choreographed. Emily stepped out from behind the counter, still clutching the side where she had been hit. The man named Mike approached her, examining her with experienced eyes. "Your father will kill me for letting you get hurt," he said, a slight smile tightening at the corners of his stern mouth. "I'm not hurt," Emily replied automatically. "Just a little sore." Mike raised an eyebrow, clearly not believing her, but didn't insist. Instead, he turned to the rest of his team. "Jackson, Ramirez, take these idiots outside. The local authorities are already on their way." 2 of the men began dragging the motorcyclists out of the store, ignoring their protests and empty threats. Mike turned to the terrified clerk, who was still partially hidden behind the counter. "Sir, I apologize for the inconvenience. Any damage to your property will be compensated." He handed the man a simple, black card with just a phone number engraved on it. "Call this number if you need anything." The clerk picked up the card with trembling fingers, looking from Mike to Emily as if he were trying to solve a particularly difficult puzzle. "Who are you people?" he finally managed to ask. Mike shrugged. "Just concerned citizens." Outside the store, the sirens began to draw closer. Emily knew she would have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of paperwork to fill out, and probably a long conversation with her father when he found out what had happened. But at that moment, as she watched the motorcycle being handcuffed by police officers who seemed equally intimidated by the presence of the former SEALs, she felt a strange calm. "How did you get here so fast?" she asked Mike as he gently examined the bruises on her face. "We were in training less than 50 kilometers from here," he explained. "Pure coincidence. When the protocol was activated, we were already in the air within 5 minutes." Emily nodded, knowing that training probably meant something she wasn't authorized to know, even given who she was. "Dad know?" Mike smiled, a genuine smile this time. "He's in the air now, returning from a consultation in Europe. He'll be landing in Norfolk in 3 hours. Want to bet he'll be here in 4? Emily sighed, but a reluctant smile played on her lips. William Mason, even retired from active service, still had connections and resources that most civilians couldn't imagine. And when it came to his only daughter, he would mobilize every single one of those resources without hesitation. In the days that followed, Emily had to deal with deposition, police reports, and carefully avoided questions about exactly how an elite team of former Navy SEALs had appeared out of nowhere at a secluded gas station in Virginia. Her father arrived exactly when Mike had predicted, and the mixture of pride and concern in his eyes upon seeing the bruises on his daughter's face almost brought her to tears. The motorcyclists faced multiple charges, ranging from assault to attempted kidnapping, and it was discovered that 3 of them were already wanted for crimes in other states. For the local police, it was an unexpected stroke of luck. For the local media, it was a curious story about a mysterious intervention that was quickly forgotten in the news cycle. For Emily, however, it was a reminder that no matter how hard she tried to lead an ordinary, normal life, the echoes of her father's world would always find her. A reminder that, although she looked like a shy librarian with glasses that were too big for her face. She carried within her something of the indomitable spirit that defined the warriors she had grown up with. 6 months after the incident, Emily finally finished the draft of her first novel. Not about quiet bookstores or sweet romances, as everyone expected, but about an ordinary young woman who discovers that heroism has nothing to do with muscles or weapons, but with the courage to face fear and do what needs to be done when the time comes. Somewhere in the dedication among acknowledgments to friends and mentors, there was an enigmatic line that very few people would fully understand: for the men in the shadows, who arrive when no one else would, and for my father, who taught me that true strength lies in knowing when to fight and when to call for reinforcement. The novel was a modest success, praised for the authenticity of its action scenes and the depth of its seemingly ordinary protagonist. Critics noted the surprisingly nuanced understanding the author seemed to have of tactical operations and combat psychology. Some speculated whether she had consulted military experts. Emily simply smiled when asked about it at small book signs in local bookstores. Some stories, after all, were better when they remained partially in the shadows, just like some heroes. And what about the old 2009 Honda Civic? Emily kept it, refusing her father's offer to buy him a safer car with better defensive features. For her, the car had become a symbol of independence, of adventure, and of a journey that had begun as a simple exploration of the East Coast but had ended up revealing more about herself than any landscape could. Sometimes, on the long trips between literary events, Emily would find herself looking at roadside gas stations and smiling to herself. Each one held endless possibilities: danger, salvation, stories waiting to be discovered, or perhaps just bad coffee and dusty snacks. The beauty, she had learned, lay in never knowing for sure, but moving forward anyway. Occasionally, Emily received emails from readers who swore that her stories were based on real events. One woman from Nebraska was convinced that Emily had been an undercover military operative. A Navy veteran wrote a review on his blog suggesting that the author clearly had inside access to Special Forces operations. Emily kept these messages in a special folder on her computer, sharing some of the funniest ones with her father during Sunday dinners. The truth, as always, was more complex than any fiction she could write. Emily had never served formally, never worn a uniform, never participated in a sanctioned operation. But growing up as William Mason's daughter meant her upbringing had been ... unconventional. There were the summer vacations she spent at age 15, when her father took her to a special camp that she later discovered was a training facility for young special operations candidates. There, under the guise of advanced outdoor activities, she learned survival techniques that most adults would never master in their entire lives. There were Dad's friends who would show up for dinner, ordinary-looking men with extraordinarily keen eyes, who would teach him games over dessert. Games like observing a room for 30 seconds and then describing every meal from memory, or identifying all the possible exits of a restaurant without looking like you were searching for them. And of course, there were the self-defense classes, which began when she was only 8 years old. Not so that you become a fighter, her father always explained, but so that you never have to be one. One autumn afternoon, almost a year after the gas station incident, Emily was sitting in her bookstore, organizing a stack of new releases, when the doorbell rang. She looked up and nearly dropped the books she was holding. "Uncle Mike," she said, surprised. "What are you doing in Portsmouth?" Michael Torsten looked out. "I've placed in civilian clothes, jeans, a plaid flannel shirt, and a worn leather jacket." Without the context of the tactical operation, he almost looked like a normal university professor, were it not for his perfectly upright posture and the gaze that seemed to constantly assess his surroundings. "I was just passing through the area," he replied with a half smile that clearly said, "We both know that's not true." Emily placed the books on the counter and crossed the bookstore to embrace him. He returned the hug with initial stiffness, then relaxed slightly. The men her father served with were not, in general, physically demonstrative people, but they made exceptions for her. "Coffee?" she offered, pointing to the small espresso machine in the corner of the shop. Mike nodded, following her to the reading area at the back, where some worn armchairs formed a cozy semicircle. While Emily prepared the drinks, She watched him out of the corner of her eye. He was methodically examining the bookstore, noting cameras, exits, and viewing angles. "You know you don't need to do a tactical assessment of my bookstore, right?" she joked, handing him a cup. He accepted the coffee with a look that was almost apologetic. "Habit. So, what's the real reason for this visit?" Emily asked, sitting down in the armchair opposite him. "I doubt you were just passing through New Hampshire." Mike took a sip of coffee, assessing her with eyes that had seen more of the world than most people ever would. "Your book?" he finally said. "I read it." Emily felt a wave of inexplicable nervousness. This man's opinion, for some reason, mattered more than any literary criticism could. "And?" she asked. "It's good." He paused, considering it. "Very good, actually. Authentic." Coming from Mike, it was practically an effusive of praise. Emily couldn't help but smile. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." Mike placed the cup on the table between them. "But that's not why I'm here." Emily's smile faltered. "No? Your father is worried." Emily sighed, leaning back in her armchair. "My father is always worried. It's his natural state of being. This time, it's different," Mike continued, leaning forward. "Have you had any unusual contact recently? Strange fans? Very specific questions about your creative process." Emily frowned, thinking. She had received hundreds of emails since her book was published, dozens of invitations to events, and a few curious questions at book signings. "Nothing that seemed alarming to me," she replied. "Why?" Mike looked around the bookstore again, making sure they were alone, then lowered his voice. "Some people are asking you questions in circles that shouldn't be interested in a debut novelist." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. "What kind of circles?" "The kind that monitors communications that mention certain ... organizations, like SEAL Team 6. Emily finished, understanding immediately. Mike nodded. "Your book includes operational details that, while fictionalized, are too accurate for some people's comfort." "But it's fiction," Emily protested, "and I never explicitly mentioned any real unit." "You and I both know this," Mike said calmly, "but raise a red flag in the right system, and someone will come to investigate. And when they investigate you, ... double quotes, they will find my father." Emily finished, feeling the weight of understanding. "And through him, you and the rest of the team." "Exactly." Emily brought her hands to her face, rubbing her eyes beneath her glasses. "Damn, I never imagined anyone would make that connection." "Most people wouldn't do it," Mike assured. "For the average reader, it's just a well-researched thriller. But for those who know what to look for, ... it's a map for real people." Emily, "People who have dedicated their lives to anonymity." A heavy silence fell between them. Emily thought of her father, of Mike, of the other men who had appeared at that gas station like avenging angels. Men who lived in the shadows by choice and necessity. Men whose families often couldn't know what they really did for a living. "What should I do?" she finally asked. Mike shrugged, a calculatedly casual gesture. "Nothing drastic, just ... be cautious. Your father suggested you might want to take a vacation. Maybe visit your aunt in Vancouver." Emily raised her eyebrows. "I don't have an aunt in Vancouver." "Now you have it," Mike replied, handing her a small, discreet envelope. "Travel documents, apartment keys, a basic introduction to your new aunt, just for a few weeks, until we can assess her level of interest in you." Emily stared at the envelope like a venomous snake. The reality of the situation finally hit her completely. This wasn't fiction. It wasn't one of her father's elaborate games or a story she was weaving in her mind. It was real and potentially dangerous. "Is this really necessary?" she asked, her voice lower. "Now, probably not," Mike admitted, "but your father and I prefer to be overly cautious when it comes to you." Emily picked up the envelope, turning it over in her hand. Part of her wanted to protest, assert her independence, insist that she could take care of herself. Another part, the part that had faced 5 motorcyclists and seen firsthand the dark world her father lived in, knew better. "When should I leave?" "Tomorrow, if possible. There's a flight leaving Boston at 2:15 p.m. Emily nodded slowly, her mind already calculating what she would need to organize. Finding someone to look after the bookstore, packing her bags, canceling appointments. "Mike," she said, a question suddenly occurring to her. "Why did you come to tell me this in person? Why not my father?" The former SEAL took another sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving hers. Your father is busy at the moment. Busy as in a meeting? Or busy as in somewhere that doesn't appear on maps? Mike almost smiled. The second option. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, letting reality sink in. Her father, technically retired for years, was still occasionally invited for consulting sessions that took him to places he could never name, for periods of time he could never specify. Is he okay? It is, Mike assured him. And you'll be much more at ease knowing you followed our advice. Emily put the envelope in her bag. I'm going to Vancouver, but on one condition. Mike raised an eyebrow. When all this is over, I want the whole truth. I want to know exactly why my book triggered alarms and who is asking questions about me. Mike studied it for a long time before answering. Your father won't like this. My father will understand, Emily countered. He always taught me that information is power. And if I'm being dragged deeper into your world, I deserve to know why. After a long moment, Mike nodded. That's fair. When it's safe, you'll know everything. He stood up, placing the empty cup on the table. There's one more thing you should know. What? The people at the gas station? The motorcyclists? His expression was carefully neutral. They weren't who they seemed to be. Emily frowned, confused. What does that mean? It means your intuition was correct that day. There was something strange about them, something out of place. He paused, as if deciding how much to reveal. 3 of them had military training. 1 had a background in foreign intelligence. Emily, blood ran cold. Are you saying it wasn't a random encounter? That they followed me on purpose? We're investigating that possibility, Mike replied cautiously. It may have been a coincidence, but coincidences aren't something we like to rely on in our line of work. Emily tried to process this information. The idea that that terrifying day could have been orchestrated, that she could have been the deliberate target of some shadowy operation, was almost impossible to comprehend. Why? She finally managed to ask, why would anyone target me? To get to your father, Mike replied simply. Or to information you might have without even knowing. Emily remembered all the fragmented stories she'd heard growing up, the conversations interrupted when she entered the room, the nighttime visitors who spoke in codes and half-truths. How many secrets did she carry without realizing? Vancouver, she said firmly. I'm going tomorrow, but when I get back, we have a lot more to talk about. Mike nodded, heading for the door. Before leaving, he turned around. Emily? Try? Your father is proud of you, of the book, of the person you've become. He hesitated, as if emotional words were a foreign language to him. We all are. With that, he left, the door closing softly behind. Emily stood in the middle of her bookstore, surrounded by fictional stories, realizing that none of them were as strange as the reality she had just found herself in. That night, in her small apartment above the bookstore, Emily packed only the essential clothes, her laptop, a few books she couldn't bear to leave behind. Following the instructions on the envelope, she transferred money between accounts, set up automatic email replies, and left a message for her assistant explaining that she needed to attend to a family emergency. While she was folding a sweater, her phone rang. The number was blocked. Hello? She answered cautiously. Her father's voice was instantly recognizable, even with the poor connection and the obvious weariness in his tone. Dad, she sighed with relief. Where are you? I can't say, came the predictable reply. Did Mike talk to you? Yes. I'm going to Vancouver tomorrow. Good girl. There was audible relief in her voice. It's just a precaution, you know? A precaution against what, exactly? Emily couldn't help but ask. Mike said something about the guys at the gas station having military training, that it wasn't a coincidence. There was a long pause. Mike talks too much sometimes. Or maybe you don't talk enough, Emily retorted. Dad, what's going on? Why would anyone be interested in me or my book? It's complicated, Eames. Then explain it to me. I'm not a child anymore. Another pause. Longer this time. When her father finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, more vulnerable than she rarely heard him. What do you think I've done all these years, Emily? The question caught her off guard. Special operations, classified missions, things you could never tell me. Yes, but for whom? Under whose authority? Emily frowned, confused. For the U.S. government, for the Navy. Most of the time, yes, his father agreed. But there were other projects, operations that existed on the fringes in gray areas. What are you saying? I'm saying that not all of my work was officially sanctioned. There were times, especially in the last few years before my retirement, when our teams were loaned out for private interests. Emily sat heavily on the bed, trying to process this. Private interests? You mean corporations? Defense contractors? Among others, his father replied vaguely. The point is that these operations were even more secretive than the official one, and some very powerful people would prefer that they remain that way. And my book somehow threatens that, Emily concluded. Even though it's fiction. Fiction based on knowledge you shouldn't have, her father corrected. Knowledge you absorbed growing up around me, listening to conversations, connecting the dots over the years. You've always been too observant for your own good. Emily thought of the protagonist of her novel, an ordinary woman who discovers a conspiracy involving former military operatives working for a mysterious corporation. It was fiction, pure invention of her mind, or at least that's what she had believed. Dad, she asked slowly, what exactly are you involved in right now? The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough. You haven't really retired, have you? She continued. Those consulting jobs you do, double quotes Emily, her father interrupted, his voice now firm. There are things you're better off not knowing, for your own safety. It's a little late for that, don't you think? She replied with a humorless laugh. Considering I'm already being watched by people who want to use me to get to you. That's why you're going to Vancouver, he said, so I can sort this out without worrying about you. What if I don't want to go? Emily challenged, though she already knew the answer. What if I want to stay and face whatever is coming? Then you would be putting me in greater danger, his father replied simply. Because I wouldn't be able to concentrate knowing that you're at risk. It was a low blow, and they both knew it. William Mason had always known exactly how to win an argument with his daughter. 3 weeks. Emily finally gave in. I'll be in Vancouver for 3 weeks. After that, I'll come home and you can tell me everything. No more secrets. Agreed, his father replied. Although they both knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. The call ended shortly after, leaving Emily alone with her thoughts and a partially packed suitcase. She glanced at her laptop, where the draft of her second novel awaited, another thriller that, she now realized, might contain more truth than fiction within its pages. With a determined sigh, Emily closed the file and opened a new document. If her life was about to take a turn into spy thriller territory, she would at least document the journey. Not for publication, perhaps never for anyone else's eyes, but for herself. Some stories, she murmured, typing the title at the top of the page, are too dangerous to be told.